Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Unlocking the Future of Observability, OpenTelemetry's role in IT performance and innovation. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be moderating today's event. Our featured speakers are Dan Twing, President and COO at Enterprise Management Associates, and Pete Golden, Publisher and Editor of APM Digest. Dan joined EMA in 2005 and has over 25 years of experience in information systems, software development, and technology outsourcing. Dan focuses on all aspects of intelligent and automated management of IT. Pete has served as editor and publisher of APM Digest for 15 years and has over 25 years of experience writing about IT for companies such as IBM, Oracle, and Salesforce. Before I hand things over to Dan and Pete, I wanted the audience to know that we will be wrapping up today's presentation by taking your questions. Feel free to log them anytime using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email from EMA with the on-demand playback, as well as additional information about this new research. So be sure and check that email out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our first featured speaker, Dan Twing. Dan?
Thanks, Raleigh. I want to start by thanking the sponsors of the research. We had a really good crew. I think this is an emerging topic, and thanks to Pete and nudging me on the topic, I think we got the timing right. And so you can see we had sponsors of Pika, Beta Systems, Dynatrace, Elastic, Embrace, and SolarWinds. So I want to thank them for making this possible. And I'm going to start by looking at the just a quick overview of what you're going to hear in more detail as we move through the research results. So the key trends that we identified that are shaping observability with OpenTelemetry in 2025 include, we found OpenTelemetry adoption is accelerating, particularly across cloud and hybrid environments. And Pete's going to get into more detail on that here in a moment. Interoperability and scalability are driving the high expectations around how OpenTelemetry can improve observability. OpenTelemetry is delivering tangible business value, and Pete's going to get into some data points later in the presentation here that really show the benefits that folks are getting from the standards adoption. Complexity and resource gaps remain top barriers. We'll spend a little time talking about some of the challenges, and AI and emerging telemetry sources are enhancing observability. So we'll also have a little bit of a look at what's changing. But before I turn it over to Pete, I'm going to share the online, a little bit of the demographics of how we collected the data. So it was an online survey. The data was collected in February of 2025. We had about 400 respondents. The respondents, similar to a lot of the research that I do, if you've attended my other research webinars, we have about 25% IT executives in this group, a mix of IT managers and other functional areas. You can see on the chart on the right there that about 53%, over half, are manager director level. There's a big group of team leads here, but then you can see the CXO and VP level. And then individual contributors are mostly in roles like infrastructure engineer or platform engineering, that sort of thing. So those are the folks that we talked to, and we talked to them. This was a global study, so we were about a third in each of North America, Europe, and Asia. For North America, that is predominantly the U.S. We looked in UK, France, and Germany for folks to take the survey to represent Europe, and Asia, in this case, is Singapore, Vietnam, India, South Korea, where we surveyed. So together, that's where we found the 400 folks to provide the data. And just to give you a little more background on that, we were looking at companies that were larger than at least 500 employees. You can see there's a good mix there from that 500 to 99, under 1,000 employees, that low end of the market, good representation in the mid market, and yet we've got 16-18% that are 10,000 employees and above. And in terms of sales revenues, the average respondent here is running in 100 million to a billion in revenues in that company size, some larger. And you can see that, also, we have some in the middle market. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pete, who's going to start by talking about the awareness, maturity, and adoption.
Thanks, Dan. So before I get into the research findings, just talk a little bit about OpenTelemetry, just for those that may not be as familiar. OpenTelemetry, called OTel for short, it's a cloud-native computing foundation incubating project since 2021. And it's an open source standard for the generation, collection, and exporting of telemetry data for observability. But it's more than just a standard. It's an open source framework, a suite of tools. It includes APIs, software development kit. It's a comprehensive project. It's also important to note it's not a standalone tool. You still need an observability vendor or open source tools for analysis, storage, and visualization to make observability happen. But it is becoming a foundational key component of observability. So let's go to the stats. The top goals of the research, some of the top goals were to determine the awareness, perception, and usage of OpenTelemetry. So let's start with awareness on this first chart here on the left. Our survey showed OpenTelemetry is already widely known across IT organizations. 68% are moderately or very familiar with OpenTelemetry. We also found an organization's observability maturity level appears to have a significant impact on the awareness, perception, and importance of OpenTelemetry. So let's go back to that previous slide for a second.
I'm sorry, Pete.
Sure. And so let's just talk about the maturity for a second first. 64% assess their own observability practice as mature or very mature. 28.5% have adequate observability, and 7.6% are immature or very immature. So now that chart on the right, we compared those numbers to awareness, and 45% of respondents with mature observability practice are very familiar with OpenTelemetry, compared to only with 17% of those with immature observability. Conversely, 63% of those with immature observability are only slightly familiar with OpenTelemetry. So you can see it's almost a direct correlation. Those with mature observability are much more aware of OTel. So on our next chart, we can see that OpenTelemetry is considered mature and useful. These numbers were even stronger than I expected. I thought there was going to be some momentum, but these are pretty strong numbers. Half of the respondents consider OpenTelemetry mature enough for implementation today. Another 31% consider it moderately mature and useful. So that's a huge number when added together. It's about 81%. Almost all, 98.7%, express support for where OpenTelemetry is heading, because we can also include that additional almost 18% that think it shows promise, even though they see it as still in the early stages. So the big picture is that these results demonstrate strong confidence in the capabilities of OTel and where it's going. So IT industry perception of OpenTelemetry's value as an enabler of observability is also strong. You can see here that 61% believe OpenTelemetry is a very important or critical enabler of observability. Another 28% see it as moderately important, and less than 1% see it as not important. So we wanted to find out what people thought about how important OTel is to observability in general, and also to their own observability strategy. So on the next slide, we asked survey takers, how important is OTel to your own observability strategy? We found that 57% see OpenTelemetry as very important or critical. This is the slide on the on the left. 57% see it as important or critical to their own observability strategy. Another 30% see it as moderately important. So this adds up to about 87%. That's pretty significant. On a different survey question, improving observability was also given as the principal reason why organizations adopted or plan to adopt OpenTelemetry. So I think that supports those numbers as well. In the second chart there on the right, you can see maturity factor again. In terms of importance this time, 67% of those with mature observability see OpenTelemetry as very important or critical to their own observability strategy. So when we look at those with immature observability, only 37% see it as important and 0% see it as critical. So you see observability maturity aligning right here with OTel again. I'll also mention here that OpenTelemetry has significant executive support from what we saw in our research findings. More senior roles in the organization place higher importance on OpenTelemetry, which indicates strong executive buy-in. When asked how important OpenTelemetry integration is when purchasing new observability solutions and mobile monitoring tools, the response is high across all roles, but the highest was for C-level IT execs, again, at 92% for observability and 89% for mobile monitoring. Let's talk about usage now. There are some strong numbers again. Just under half currently use OpenTelemetry. You can see that big green piece of the pie right there on the left. Another quarter are not using OpenTelemetry yet, but are planning to implement. This means that just under 75% are either using or planning to use it, which I think bodes well for the future of this standard. The remaining quarter are still evaluating, so these might be future users as well. Note that only 1.5% have no plans whatsoever to implement. So this shows it's a well-known and popular standard. On the right, the chart shows maturity factor again coming into play. There's a clear correlation between observability maturity and OpenTelemetry adoption. Usage increases with maturity. You can see the chart, 61% with a mature observability practice already use OpenTelemetry. You can look at that big blue bar on the far right, compared to only 1% who don't. Conversely, only 30% with immature observability are using OpenTelemetry. So let's dig a little deeper on usage. More than 95% of those currently using OpenTelemetry are instrumenting at least 10% of their environment with OpenTelemetry, and 35% are instrumenting half or more of their environment. We found as well some more usage information. We found that people are using OpenTelemetry to monitor all types of environments, but the most concentrated usage was in the cloud. So we had cloud at 16%, hybrid cloud at 12%, and multi-cloud at 10%. Those were the top 3 environments where OpenTelemetry is currently deployed. And this data also aligns with some other survey findings we had, which was that 3 of the 4 most popular observability solutions are hyperscaler tools. They had Google Cloud Operations Suite, AWS CloudWatch, and Azure Monitor. So there's definitely a cloud theme here. But on the other hand, I would point out that respondents report OpenTelemetry usage in a diverse range of other environments, including on-premises servers, edge computing, mobile, web, mainframe, microservices, containers. So you're using it across the full spectrum. But I think the data shows that OpenTelemetry has proven agility to be used across the IT landscape. Dan, did you have anything to add here?
Sure. I think one thing we noticed is, how broadly are people deploying it? There's a lot of pre-existing observability that isn't going to be ripped and replaced necessarily for OTel. The focus is on what we're not yet observing for many organizations. Although, if there are capabilities or features expanded telemetric data, there, some are upgrading pre-existing, observability APIs so that they, can take advantage of OTel. But for the most part, it's let's capture the new, and what works, leave it alone. So, that then puts the focus mostly in the cloud native environments.
Great. So right here, you can see the chart on who's using OTel in terms of roles. So usage of OpenTelemetry found spans a variety of IT roles. Primary user is IT operations at 27%. That was to be expected. But then you've got several other roles. You've got developers at 17%, DevOps at about 16%, site reliability engineers about 15%, platform engineers about 14%. So that's a pretty broad range. We also found OpenTelemetry's integrated with a range of tools, including observability. Obviously, that was about 15%, and then a lot of similar observability related tools, application performance monitoring or management, APM, network performance monitoring management, NPM, infrastructure monitoring, all at about 14% each. We also checked out usage with specific languages. OpenTelemetry is used with the most popular programming languages, including Java at 22%, JavaScript, TypeScript 20%, C++ 18%, Python 17%. So it's spread out like that, and there's several other languages it's used for as well. So let's talk about challenges now. We broke down the challenges and concerns in terms of what is stopping organizations from adopting OTel. What challenges do they expect to encounter, and what challenges have they experienced during implementation? The responses for all three of those categories are very similar. So I'm not going to break them down per category here, but you can see those breakdowns in the report, as well as some commentary from the survey takers if you're interested. But I'm just going to go through what some of these top challenges and concerns in general were, and some of them are listed right here on this chart. Complexity of implementations, number one on the chart here, that tops the list of OpenTelemetry user challenges. This is a common challenge for many new technologies, so it's something that you would expect. Compatibility with existing systems, that's another big one that we saw across the board. So although OpenTelemetry's greatest advantage is being vendor neutral, it's intended to work across a variety of environments and integrate with various tools. Some of the respondents still express frustration with OpenTelemetry integration. Now, some of this concern may be speculative. On the other hand, a few reported actual integration challenges during implementation. Let's go back to that previous chart
Sorry.
just for a minute. I'm just going to go through some more of these challenges. Lack of skilled resources and the training required to implement and manage OpenTelemetry was another challenge. We've got high cost of adopting OpenTelemetry, which they're attributing to the cost of the staff, development, and training, as well as data processing, analysis, and storage. Language dependencies was another concern. OpenTelemetry only supports certain languages at varying levels of stability. Some respondents mentioned security risks, such as malware, data security, and privacy. Data management and storage concerns, especially with regard to handling large data volumes that will be generated by OpenTelemetry. People were concerned about performance overhead that's required to run OpenTelemetry. Some concern, they questioned the project maturity. You saw before that some people believe that OTel is ready to use today, while others still think it's not as mature. Lack of vendor support was another concern. It's a common concern applicable to any open source solution. Resistance to change within the organization, a common obstacle for any new technology, and the impact of AI. Some are looking to the future and wondering how OTel will work with AI. That's something that remains to be seen. So let's go to the next chart now. This one's one of the charts for challenges. It's covering challenges users have encountered with OpenTelemetry or expect to encounter. As you can see, you've got integration with current tools, complexity of implementation, data management. They top the list, which includes many of the challenges I was just talking about. However, I would say that the concerns for respondents do not necessarily reflect badly on OpenTelemetry. Any new technology is going to take time and effort to implement. The real question, is it worth it? So I think when you're looking at the challenges, it's important to understand that the data, including some of the findings we'll be showing you in a minute about the benefits and the ROI, and shows that users are getting around the challenges and they feel it's worth the time and effort and cost despite the challenges and concerns outlined here. You can read more about this idea on my site, APM Digest. That's www.apmdigest.com. It's a two-part blog from a governance committee member for OpenTelemetry project we just posted today. He outlines some of the struggles and strengths of OTel and comes to this conclusion. He says, the journey might have its frustrations, but OpenTelemetry is undeniably shaping the future of the field. So if you're listening to this webinar live, you can go to APM Digest today. That blog is the most recent blog. If you're listening to this on demand, then you can look for the blog on April 14th and 15th. Let's go to the benefits then. So since OTel is not a standalone tool, it requires an observability solution. So we broke down the benefits of OTel into two categories. First is the direct benefits that help IT organizations, and the other is the benefits derived from OTel supporting observability tools. Like, how does OTel make observability tools better? So on this chart here, you can see the direct benefits. Respondents cited improved productivity. IT ops productivity was ranked #1 at almost 15%. And developer productivity was also a top benefit, 11.6%. Improved developer experience was also a top benefit, rounding out with simplified metrics collection, greater visibility into software and systems. So these were the benefits that they would get directly from OTel. Um, let's go to the next chart. We'll delve into specifics about improved productivity. Here we've got IT ops productivity. So for those that increased IT ops productivity with OpenTelemetry, about 60% report more than a 20% improvement, and another 37% report a 10 to 20% improvement. So you can see that they're getting some real benefits here. We've also got the developer productivity on the next slide. Similar numbers. You've got, for those that increased developer productivity with OpenTelemetry, over 60% report more than a 20% improvement, and another 34% report a 10 to 20% improvement. So this next chart shows how OTel supports observability solutions. These are the benefits that OTel helps observability tools deliver. On this chart, you can see reduced mean time to repair, MTTR, and improved user experience are cited. They're the top advantages that OpenTelemetry helps observability tools deliver. User experience here includes customer, employee, and mobile experience. I'll give you some findings from other survey questions not shown here on this chart to show how OTel is an enabler of observability as well. We found observability is the most common solution integrated with OpenTelemetry, and 87% of those using or planning to use OTel say OpenTelemetry integration is very important when selecting a new observability tool. When asked how they justify observability tool investments to senior management, the top reasons align directly with the top OpenTelemetry benefits cited by survey respondents, including improved operational efficiency, which I would say includes productivity, it's 19%, cost savings, just over 17%, improved user experience and customer satisfaction, 17%. So we're going to show you a couple of charts related to MTTR and user experience next. But before we do, I just want to talk a little bit about the benefit of data management, because we're not going to be showing a chart for this, but I just want to talk about it for a minute. The ability to collect and manage data is a running theme in terms of OpenTelemetry benefits. We found that collecting and correlating data from multiple sources is cited as the #1 observability challenge OpenTelemetry addresses, and managing large data volumes is ranked 3rd in the same category. Data quality and accuracy with OpenTelemetry are also mentioned as primary factors driving ROI. The respondents say OpenTelemetry allows large data volumes to be collected from different sources and sent to multiple platforms without significant configuration changes. Respondents also say OpenTelemetry reduces redundant data collection, provides fast and accurate data processing, offers extensions and integrations with other applications for data management, and helps you optimize the cost of storing, processing, and monitoring data. Now, you may remember data management was mentioned earlier as a challenge, but here you can see that many users also see it as helping with the data management challenge as well. So let's talk a little bit about user experience. On this chart, you can see more than 1/3 report that OpenTelemetry helps observability tools by reducing application and mobile response time. Other advantages in terms of how OTel helps observability impact systems and applications: reduced downtime, application and mobile app crashes, and network latency. It reduces all that. More specifically, about improved user experience. Um, let's stay on that previous chart for a sec. Just want to talk about, we've got response report improvements related to user experience, such as faster application response time, just over 24%, higher satisfaction scores, 22%, increased engagement time, 20%, and fewer issues reported by users, 17%. So that chart's not here, but you can see that in the report as well. We found customer satisfaction score is the third highest metric to define IT success, and half of organizations with mature observability practice use this benchmark. Those that gained user experience improvements attributed to OpenTelemetry's support for observability rank high satisfaction scores as the second highest benefit. So other improvements cited in relation to user experience include faster application response time, which was ranked first, and increased user engagement, which was ranked third. So that's just a little bit more about user experience. Let's go to that next chart now about MTTR. We found that mean time to repair, meaning faster issue resolution, is chosen as the second highest metric used to define IT success. 58% of teams with mature observability practice prioritize MTTR to define success, and almost half of those with adequate or immature observability use the same benchmark. And when asked about benefits OpenTelemetry helps observability solutions deliver, the number one benefit is MTTR at 27%. So on the chart here, for those who reduced MTTR with OpenTelemetry, you can see 95% cut issue remediation by at least 10%. Out of that group, 47.7% report more than a 20% improvement in MTTR, and another 47.7% report a 10 to 20% improvement. So let's talk about ROI. With many technologies, it all comes down to return on investment in the end, and OpenTelemetry is no different. ROI is the foundation of the business case for OpenTelemetry, and we're seeing some solid numbers. You can see here just over 46% of organizations are seeing greater than 20% ROI for OpenTelemetry, and another 40% are achieving 10 to 20% ROI. Only 2.6% of those using OpenTelemetry are not seeing any ROI. So respondents were asked what drives their OpenTelemetry ROI, and the most popular answer is improved observability and monitoring, including faster issue detection and resolution, improved system and application performance, and reduced downtime. A wide range of other ROI drivers were reported as well, and those align with the benefits of OpenTelemetry covered in the report and covered in this webinar, including observability cost savings, which we'll get to, avoidance of vendor lock-in, increased efficiency and productivity for both IT operations and development, integration with existing tools, and enhanced customer experience and retention. So with this in mind, I'd like to quote a survey respondent who said about ROI, OpenTelemetry helps optimize observability costs, improve system performance, and increase development team efficiency, thereby improving ROI. So let's talk a little about costs now. On the next chart, reduced observability cost is one of the leading drivers of OpenTelemetry ROI, which makes sense. On the chart here, you can see for those that reduced observability cost with OpenTelemetry, 42% report a decrease of more than 20%, and another 42% say cost decrease 10 to 20%. To see where the cost savings are coming from, one respondent said, previously we relied on multiple agents for different data types. Now the OpenTelemetry unified approach reduces our instrumentation costs by half annually due to simplified deployment and maintenance. So half annually, I mean, that's pretty significant. Another advantage that helps reduce costs as well, I'll talk about here, is eliminating or at least mitigating vendor lock-in. As I mentioned a little earlier, this was cited as a driver of ROI as well. When we're talking about open source, on the one hand, some respondents express concerns about the lack of vendor support. On the other hand, as open source, OpenTelemetry enables users to break vendor lock-in. So when asked how they expect OpenTelemetry to impact observability in the future, 25% said that reducing vendor lock-in through interoperability and standardization of observability practices across tools and platforms was a main reason. Dan, did you have any comments on cost?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's doing exactly what standards are meant to do, right? Modern IT is all about integrations, it seems lately. We have AI coming, and we're going to talk about futures here in a moment. Having the ability to make reasoned decisions along the way in an automated fashion gets us closer to the goal of self-aware, self-healing systems. But you can't achieve that if you don't have the telemetry data to understand what's going on, right? So if you're gonna automate actions and try to bring all of this forward, you've got to have the good data, and so you've got to integrate that data everywhere. And the standard just makes that so much simpler. And we see those benefits are accruing to those, who are certainly using it in its early life cycle. It's only going to get better. We're only going to come up with more types of data, and eventually that will mean folks will want to, rip and replace non-OTel things eventually. But right now it's about just getting everything wired up, and the standard just lowers that barrier to being able to achieve that.
Great. So as Dan said, we're going to talk about the future now. We responded several questions about the future. Considering the findings of this research, adoption rates, favorable perception, the extensive benefits of OpenTelemetry, the ROI, all validated by this research, the outlook for OTel is very strong, as you can see. On this chart, you see about 92% have positive expectations about the future impact of OpenTelemetry will have on their observability capabilities. This is a powerful endorsement of the technology. Top advantages driving these positive expectations include improved interoperability, integration, observability scalability, flexibility and customization, as well as reduced observability costs, reduced vendor lock-in, and simplified telemetry data collection and management. You can see a chart and the stats for all that in the report as well. On this next chart here, we've got some interesting findings for those either currently using or planning to implement OpenTelemetry. 67%. This is not the chart yet, but I'm going to give you some other stats that we're not showing here on the chart. But 67% plan to fully instrument their environment with OpenTelemetry, while the remainder will maintain a mixed environment with some proprietary agents for the long term. So we asked organizations about their plans to expand the use of OpenTelemetry in the next 12 to 24 months. The most popular plan is to expand coverage across more systems or applications. That was 22%. In terms of expanded coverage, the top targets were cloud native applications, multi-cloud environments, Internet of Things, and both on-premises and mobile applications. So a broad range. In terms of plans to expand, in addition to expanded coverage just mentioned, almost 22% plan to add more OpenTelemetry components such as APIs, 19% plan to conduct more experimentation, almost 18% plan to expand into mobile app monitoring, and 17% plan to use additional signals such as metrics, logs, or traces. By the way, OpenTelemetry is an ongoing open source project. So, it's got continuous potential for improvement. For example, project contributors are working on adding support for several new signals. So we were asking the respondents as well about what observability data types or sources they'd like to see, for OpenTelemetry support in the future. Generative AI, unsurprisingly, was a top one. It was the top one at just under 34%, followed by real user monitoring at 27%, and additional resource utilization monitoring that was such as eBPF at 23%. So on this chart here that we're showing, respondents who plan to conduct more OpenTelemetry experimentation over the next 12 to 24 months. The most prevalent use cases included real user monitoring, mobile application observability, infrastructure performance visibility, Kubernetes observability, microservices monitoring, and exploring AI-powered insights. And that last point about AI, I think, is going to become a popular objective because with the mountains of performance data generated by OTel, AI is really going to be needed, especially in the future, to sift through it, make sense of it, and gain some actionable insights. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dan.
Thanks, Pete. Before we move to the Q&A, I just to comment on the use cases. another area that I cover intensively is automation. And just recently, one of the sponsors here, Beta Systems, released a full stack observability product, but the initial focus was on automation. So while that didn't show up in the data here, starting to see, other areas that are, not necessarily yet in the sights of OTel specifically, but the idea that there's other things to observe besides users and apps and infrastructure and networking, but other actions like the actions of automation. I also expect we'll see AI observability, right? We're going to have to be watching how those tools perform and how accurate they are, transparency around that. So there's a lot of, I think, futures beyond even what we can think about right now, and I think that's very exciting. And hopefully, OTel will continue to encompass those other areas so that the standard itself, continues to provide all those benefits, right? If you're going to observe automation, you would hope that you could create one connection around a standard like OTel that would allow that. So I'm sure these use cases will continue to expand. And OTel is certainly set up to absorb those and collect that, as an open source project. So as we move into the Q&A, before we get there, I just wanted to share a couple of things. On the bottom of this page, Pete's already referred to the recent blog that he posted, but you can see here how to get to APM Digest. It's a site that EMA has worked with a lot over the years around app performance, service management, and observability, and it was really logical for us to work with Pete on this project, and I think Pete and I have some other plans for other topics in the future. If you'd like to hear more from me, I want to just share this podcast link here. Enterprise Automation Excellence will certainly be talking broader than just automation, because automation has a lot of other impacts. So you can expect even here we plan to have some episodes around observability in the near future. So you can certainly check that out. With that though, I'm gonna turn it back to Raleigh to lead us into the Q&A, and we'll leave this on screen so you can get that info while we address the questions. So Raleigh, what do you have for us?
Well, let's start with Pete. The first question is, did you see anything in the research that could stop or slow down broader adoption of OpenTelemetry?
So the short answer is no. I mean, the momentum's strong. My prediction is that it continues to increase, and I think Dan would agree with me. There are definitely challenges. We covered all that: complexity in implementation, integration issues, all the points covered in the webinar. But the users are overcoming these barriers and gaining valuable advantages. I didn't see anything in the research that would indicate OpenTelemetry adoption will slow down anytime soon, so no.
Thank you, Pete. Jumping over to you, Dan. How do you see the role of OpenTelemetry evolving as organizations adopt more AI-driven observability solutions?
Yeah, I think the standard is important, and just the idea of observability, as I mentioned earlier, is really going to expand as AI, is increasingly integrated into both observability platforms and just broader IT in general. When I started doing the analyst work, we used to talk a lot about, especially IBM, 20 years ago, was talking about autonomic systems, right? And the idea that systems could both be self-aware, self-healing. I think we are finally on the precipice of that, as I said earlier. And so that role for OTel is to provide pathways to new things that we might want to observe, and also just to provide all of the data that's necessary for AI to then take corrective actions, both to inform, to lead us to the root cause of things more quickly. So you have to have both the logic capabilities of AI and the actual signals and data that you're going to get from OTel.
Good insights. And Dan, given the increasing importance of OpenTelemetry, how should organizations prioritize their investments in the tools and frameworks?
Yeah, I think I don't know that we necessarily got into that data here. It's certainly in the report. Um, the idea that, how important is your next tool purchase in terms of its support for OpenTelemetry? And I don't have command of that data, at my fingertips here, but it was significant, right? People are making tool purchase decisions, particularly around observability platforms or other tools where the act of observing them is important. That everything that folks are looking to buy going forward is supporting OpenTelemetry, so that that new app, that new mobile app, is observable. I think Pete talked about adoption, but it goes beyond just I like the standard, and it goes to I'm going to make my future buying decisions with this as a key element.
Thanks, Dan. Pete, let's jump back over to you. Why do you think OpenTelemetry is so popular?
So I guess there's a lot of things that we talked about in the webinar that would show that, there's a lot of factors, and I think that's why it is so popular. There's a lot of things to like about it. Open source is probably one of the most compelling reasons. It enables users to break vendor lock-in and gain flexibility, maybe save money too. I think that's a really strong, uh, force behind the momentum. The fact that it includes all three pillars of observability, metrics, logs, and traces in one telemetry collection system, that hasn't been done before. So I think that makes it really appealing to people. Um, you can see in the research it delivers, it delivers for IT teams. Productivity, improved observability, improved user experience. So there's a lot of advantages, and I would finally say that OpenTelemetry provides a strong business case, like I mentioned before. It helps reduce costs. It delivers ROI. It pays for itself, so that it's a no-brainer there. I think it's a win for IT and business. So what's not to like about that?
Thanks, Pete. Dan, what metrics should organizations focus on when measuring the effectiveness of OpenTelemetry in their observability strategies?
Sure. Before I get to that answer, I'm just going to advance the slide here and leave some different information up there for the rest of our conversation here. So you can certainly get the report from EMA at this URL, but each of the sponsors we referenced earlier also has the report available. So certainly track your copy down from any of the sponsors or from here. But to get back to your question on metrics and measure, I think the survey did a pretty good job of looking at the benefits, and it gets to that productivity, and that I guess if you buy a new application or you upgrade an application to a new version that all of a sudden has OTel support, it's just easier to bring the new app in or to improve the observability of a pre-existing app, because you have less effort in integration. And I think that OTel itself is well thought out, and as Pete mentioned, new signals all the time. So it really gets to the two big issues Pete talked about: the productivity of the developer teams, either being able to bring new things into the observed fold faster because they have maybe a pre-existing support for a standard, and the observability tool you're using also supports that standard. So as new things come up, new apps are brought on, it just makes it a lot easier to get them observed at the right level of detail with all the various kinds of data that you might want. So we talked about developer productivity, and then we talked about the end results, right? Just faster time to resolution, and overall better user experience. So you can look at the program at those macro levels And, that's things you expect to get out of broader observability, and that will be impacted a lot by the observability tool you use and its capabilities. But under the covers, OTel is just making all of that easier, and those very macro level metrics should improve. In fact, that's what we saw in the survey data here is folks really attributed the standard to a lot of those gains.
Thanks for those insights, Dan. Let's take one final question, wrapping up with you, Pete. Has OpenTelemetry changed how organizations select observability vendors? What are you seeing?
So that's a good question. We actually covered some of that in the report. I'll talk about it a little bit, but to get all the info, you probably want to download the report. But I would answer that in two ways. First, the research that you've seen here today clearly shows OTel is impacting vendor selection. In the survey, we asked how important is OpenTelemetry when selecting certain tools. Dan was just referencing that as well. And 87% said it's very important for observability tools. 83% said the same for mobile monitoring. So it's impacting it today. People are looking for tools that integrate with OpenTelemetry. We even found a higher rate among C-levels execs. I think I mentioned that before, 92% for observability and 89% for mobile monitoring. But the second thing I'd say is that it should impact observability purchasing decisions. I would recommend, and I think Dan would agree, to look for vendors that are committed to OpenTelemetry. And we're not just talking about integration. We're talking about involvement in the community, contributing to the project. I think Dan and I both believe OpenTelemetry is going to be the future of observability data collection. And so you want a vendor that's going to take OpenTelemetry seriously. We talk about that a little more in the report. So download the report and you can read all about that.
Great, thank you. And we did get one final question, so I'm going to throw it out there.
Great.
Pete or Dan, feel if whoever wants to take it, or if you both want to chime in, fantastic. The question is, with the increasing volume of data how important are the telemetry pipelines?
That's a good question. I think it will be, Pete may have some thoughts as well. I mean, data pipelines generally are becoming more and more automated, and there's more structural around it. And this data is certainly no different. So it will, it's more flowing through the standard here. So how it's collected is, I think, fairly obvious, but how long do you keep it? How do you store it? What else do you do with it? Maybe is where I would put maybe more question marks as this matures. Pete, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that a little bit before, that OpenTelemetry is going to drive a lot more data. It's going to have a deluge of data coming to you. And so data management is an issue. That's why you saw it as a challenge, as a concern on several of the questions that we asked the respondents. But then also we saw that OpenTelemetry can also help in that area. So definitely, in the report, we actually have some advice. And one of the advice is you've got to build up your ability to handle that kind of data. And so like what Dan was just talking about, storage and things like that, you really need to be able to handle it if you're going to be able to use OpenTelemetry and get the benefits out of it that you want. Yeah.
Yeah, the standard makes the collection side easier, and but I think away from the standard, you need to look to the observability platform vendors, many of which are represented here in our group of sponsors. They will certainly be bringing additional solutions there, both to decide what to keep, how to utilize it, how long to keep it. I think the challenge will be more on the back end, just the volume of it, and what's usable, what's valuable. More AI will be brought to bear, machine learning algorithms, other kinds of predictive analytics. The capabilities will be powerful, but there'll be a trade-off between how much of that do you keep? How long is it valuable? And at what point, does it become diminishing returns to keep more? So I think the data management problem will be less on the collection side because the standard makes that easier. It's more what you do long term. And I think certainly many of the sponsors here probably could answer that better than we can because they know what's coming in their roadmaps. I've had exposure to some of it, and yeah, I think it's that after the immediate data collection, you're using some of that right on the edge to know that systems are up and running, but there's a lot to be learned from the historical data. And I think that's where we'll see some future value as this continues to mature.
Excellent. Thank you, Pete and Dan, for your insights. And I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us. As I mentioned, you will be receiving a follow-up email from EMA later today, so check that email out. It will include the on-demand playback, and I also invite you to check out all the sponsor sites. As Dan mentioned, they will all have copies of the report. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.